Everyone knows the brutal story of Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany and all the people that were slaughtered. Sort of everybody knows that Joseph Stalin did the same thing as he imposed his brutal reign in the Soviet Union. What people don't hear about so much is Tito's reign of terror here in Serbia. People were executed without a trial, without a hearing, suspected of being Nazi sympathizers, but he also killed the artists and the poets and the actors. Initial political executions devolved into concentration camps. We're going to tell that story, a story you have never heard before. Professor, thanks for joining us. Tell us first a little bit about your research project.
As a scholar at the Institute of Contemporary History, the topic that I'm invested in is repression of the communist regime in post-war period, at the time of the Cold War, spanning from 40s to the end of the 20th century. This topic was until recently quite novel in Serbia. Here we face major problems in making this topic a public one, for it to be presented in mainstream media. Titoism was two-sided. Part of the society remembers the good old days, from 60s to 80s, when they lived a good life for their standards. But not many people are willing to concede that Serbia and Yugoslavia, compared to Eastern Europe, had the most executions per capita. This country had most political prisoners. That, in fact, it was the most oppressive country with lowest standards of human rights. Violence was scripted. It was not an outcome of anarchy or lawlessness. At first, communist agents would make lists based on which people would be apprehended, shortly questioned, and then taken during the night and shot in groups of 50 to 100. This lasted for months, without trials. Afterwards, lists of those shot were printed. On one side, they wanted to intimidate, and on the other, they would put names of professors, lawyers, teachers, and other anti-communists along with those who behaved suspiciously during the war, possibly perpetrators of crimes. In this way, they were killed the second time. As I say it, they threw out the clean along with the dirty. We are speaking of more than 60,000 people, and as the Commission uncovered, more than 200 locations in Serbia. At this moment, as we speak, in close proximity to us are bodies of those slain without trial. Not one place was properly marked, and current political structures are resisting it. The commission that I was a part of that uncovered all this was terminated. This is not the only thing in which Serbia is an exception in the communist world and Eastern Europe. Yugoslavia had the only camp for re-education of political convicts. This camp was based in Goli Otok, a barren island, and its uniqueness was that political convicts were, under torture, re-educating each other. More than 16,500 people experienced that camp.
So not only political executions after the war, but actual concentration camps. What is this building?
This is a building of State Security Service called OZNA, UDBA, EDB, something like this. And in this place is a jail of OZNA. Now is student restaurant.
Is this one of the prisons you were speaking of?
Yes.
Here, take a look. On this and other lists, in books, I will also show you the database later. There are names of artists, scientists, actors. Yes, you heard well, actors. In Serbia and nowhere else in Eastern Europe, 15 actors were executed. As far as I know, there is no country in Eastern Europe that shot actors, or the president of the Red Cross. Petrzic, president of the Red Cross, was executed. He's listed under number 56.
Here's something I didn't expect. Tito immediately goes after the poets and the artists and the actors. Why would he do that? Because culture and the individuality of artists would be very contrary to the goals of a top-down, one-size-fits-all socialist state. It's pernicious, but you see that pattern again and again, not just here, but in the Soviet Union and other totalitarian regimes. They have to control. So in our country, there is a protest rising called Antifa, the anti-fascists. And they are, when you dig a little bit deeper, they're explicitly communist. And I think the roots come from not only Serbia and Yugoslavia, but all of Eastern Europe and the Soviet experiment. Isn't communism just another flavor of fascism? So what are they fighting about?
Well, in Serbia, after the Second World War, communism was acquiring power based on the idea of anti-fascism. An anti-fascist women's front, this and that anti-fascist front, pioneers, pensioners, everything was anti-fascist. And all that was not communist, not in accordance with this ideology, was marked as fascist. They are very much alike if you analyze all totalitarian regimes, not just on the left, but also on the right. The way they treat people, citizens, their liberty, it makes them very much alike. All systems require that people participate in the making of a new society, of a new human. People are pressured on the one side by ideology, propaganda, cult of personality, and on the other by repression, violence, monitoring, validation, and so on. These systems never leave you at peace. Such was Hitler's system, National Socialist, such was Mussolini's system, Stalin's, Mao Zedong's, Ho Chi Minh's, and all other systems of left and right totalitarianism. Think of any definition you like, they all strive towards one thing, eliminating individual freedom, freedom of choice. In Serbia, things have not changed as much as I would have liked. Yet, thanks to effort of many, my associates, friends, and other freelance scholars who faced many obstacles, I think that things have changed at least a little bit when it comes to facing communist crimes and repression, compared to 10 or 20 years ago. At that time, you could not read a single article about this in Serbian newspapers or mainstream media, and things that we are now discussing were estimations without facts. Today, the problem is that this is not mainstream, not a topic, not present in the media. People have an ambivalent relationship towards the issue. It is not well publicized, and to our regret, public opinion has yet to change sufficiently. You will hear from many from the other side that I'm a man who praises war criminals, fabricates history, and so on. Serbia is, in a way, still a divided country. There are probably many who will give praise for my work, which means that we are still in kind of a balance. This truth is not an easy one to accept. It does not appeal to many ideologically obsessed people. But I hope that in the future, younger generations that are not so burdened by ideology will be able to present even ideas from the left in a better way. For I believe that today the left in Serbia is much more hardline than in other countries. For example, in Croatia and other countries, social democrats are willing to reject the heritage of Stalin. It is much easier in countries such as Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, as it was alien to them. Here Tito had actual influence. He was truly popular. Communism was native, it was not brought in by Russian tanks and enforced. Many here will now readily say, this was not Stalinism. Our socialism was much better, much closer to Lenin's ideas. And we lived a good life then, although freedom was infringed upon. Facing the evil side is much more difficult here. Authoritarian political culture is in a way appropriate for this society, as more change is needed. The society is still not accepting liberal values in full, and I doubt that they will ever be a majority. But having it in a greater amount would develop a healthy environment, a fresh left that will free itself from Bolshevism and Titoism as its spawn, as there is no essential difference between them. I hope for more decency in the country. This is something for the long run. At this moment, I am doing what I can, with my associates and friends at the Institute. We organize debates and lectures, produce movies, we have a website, an association that promotes values of democracy, liberalism, decent memory of the victims, establishment of monuments, opening up of state archives, and similar ideas. For democratization of Serbia, I think that without an appropriate relation to these, not historical but issues of the present, there will be no spiritual transition to a democracy. We cannot praise Tito or deny Stalinist post-war crimes while constructing a democratic society. For the same people will continue cultivating the cult of power. They will be waiting for the next Tito, looking for him. And now they found him. He is present. And afterwards they will find another one, until things change. In the communist Yugoslavia and in other communist systems such as Russia or in Poland, not to mention Asian ones, the guilt lies not only with the individual, but also with their family.
Nije krivac samo čovjek, krivac je njegova porodica I
They are usually subject to torture, being denied social rights, children not being allowed to enter just any university, and so on. Constantly watched, they must check in with the police, and in a way they are second-class citizens. For all these people, executed, detained, convicted or not, those who suffered sophisticated pressure as families, there is not a single monument, not in Belgrade or anywhere in Serbia. That is all you need to know about how this country broke off with the communist authoritarian and totalitarian heritage.
So now we know. Tito's experiment in socialism here in former Yugoslavia was every bit as tyrannical and brutal and anti-human as anything that Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin would have tried to do. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Executions, concentration camps, death, socialism kills.